Welcome to the Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom, a podcast by the Lavish Group. We are a community of powerful leaders and creators. Each one of us is on a different path and from a different background, but we all embody aspects of what it means to truly live a lavish life. And we are here to share our stories. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Lavish Conversations. I am here with our amazing guest, Dr. Yasmin Davidds. Welcome, Dr. Davidds.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation. As you and I were discussing before we went live here, I feel like there is a lot of alignment. And for those listening, Dr. Davidds is a powerhouse. So listen up, because she is one of the go-to people when we're talking about teaching women leaders how to lead authentically and powerfully. So first, Dr. Davidds, I would love it if you would share your story. What put you on the path of not only being an amazing business person, very well educated, but also in empowering women across cultures, across the globe?
You know, I see it as my life purpose to empower and develop women. And I really found my life purpose at the age of 5 years old. I mean, and it's interesting because, yes, it's been a phenomenal journey of life with a lot of trauma, but the trauma I've been able to turn into power. And that is because at the age of 5, I realized that I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My father was very abusive towards my mother, my sisters, and I. My father was from Ecuador, immigrant from Ecuador. My mother was an immigrant from Mexico, came here to give their future children a better life. But as my father progressed, they were uneducated, second and third grade education. He worked in factories. They both did until my father started some entrepreneur ventures, started like at flea markets selling stereos on top of the car and stuff. It kind of grew into entrepreneur ventures of like the Radio Shack chains of electronic stores. And with more money came power. And with more power came abuse in our household, where my father believed he was, the king of all aspects. And there was physical abuse, there was emotional abuse, there was sexual abuse. And I knew at the age of 5 that something was wrong, because we couldn't even ask questions like, why does this happen? Because we would get slapped. And so my mom couldn't ask questions. She was a victim of this abuse, of domestic violence. And I would ask my mom, Mommy, in Spanish, ¿por qué? Why are we living this? Like, let's leave. And she would say, Mijita, I don't speak the English language. I don't have any skills. I don't have an education. If we leave, we will be homeless. But if we stay, at least you have a house, we have a house, we have food. And I said, oh no, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to change the world and make it better for women. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. I was 5 years old. I think back, my little guts, how can I possibly think that I would have the power to do that? Only later through my healing did I discover that it was my only way of finding hope in life at that age, of finding a way to continue to want to live. It's such a hopeless situation, and feeling so helpless, it was my only way to feel hopeful and in control and power and have power for my life, was that I wasn't able to save my mom, maybe not even able to save myself, but I would find a way to help other women, or girls or whatever it may be. So I literally remember I made a choice at that age to do everything I could to help little girls on the playground not be bullied, to like be president of my class every year, to ensure that girls wouldn't get taken advantage. I mean, it was just this purpose. And I remember at the age of 8 asking my mom again, Mommy, let's leave. You're strong enough. We can do it together. I'm older. My older sister was 2 years older. She's 10. I was 8. My baby sister was 1. I'd be like, Mommy, we can do this together. And she's like, Mijita, I don't have the strength. However, whatever you do, don't be like me when you grow up. Get your education, because your grandmother told me as long as I was a good wife, I'd be taken care of, but no one told me the price I had to pay. And I remember at that age, I decided I was going to be the most educated Latina. I didn't know what a PhD was. I didn't know what a doctorate was. I just knew I was going to reach the highest level so I would never have to depend on anyone to take care of me. So I would have to be like my mother. And so I made many choices as a child that I have lived out throughout the years. And so many things that happen afterwards that I have chosen to use them as strength and purpose, and have been able over time to actually see them as gifts, because I live the most amazing life, but it's because I'm living my purpose.
Wow. Wow, that is an amazing story. I'm a little bit like, whew, it's hitting home. So you and I share similar stories. Those decisions that we make when we're so young, and I myself remember pleading similarly with my mother. And my mother was not educated. I mean, she had a high school education, but she never went to college, and she didn't have a vocation. Depended on my father for everything. And those decisions that I made to be like, oh no man is ever going to control me like that, or I'm going to be so dependent on somebody else that I can't have the freedom to live my life the way that I want to live it. It's so powerful. And so you went to college, you went to USC, University of Southern California, and got a degree in business, which is one of the best business programs. And then what? What'd you do at that point?
I got my undergraduate degree at USC, and I met my ex-husband there. He was a football player for USC. He got drafted into the NFL. And so I became 1 year after graduating, I worked for Philip Morris for a year, and then I became an NFL wife and had to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where my ex-husband played NFL football, and was miserable because now I was no longer being controlled by my father, but now I was being controlled by the NFL on what, it was like a life of where like all the women and wives were committed to their husbands, and that was beautiful for them. But I had plans. I wanted to build a company. I wanted to maybe be in Congress, and people, that life is not conducive to a woman really having her own life, because then you're looked upon as not being a supporting wife, right? And not being there. So I was miserable. I was depressed. Ended up moving to San Diego to go to San Diego State University to get my master's in women's studies, because I needed to do something for myself. And Charlotte it's a beautiful city, just not beautiful for me. I remember people saying, you come from LA, are you getting shot at all the time? And I'm sitting there going, oh. I'm like, really, people? I mean, this was 1996, or 27 years ago or something, or 25 years ago. But it was just so not, me. And so I went back and I got my master's degree in women's studies and lived the NFL life. And then my ex-husband's, we took each other's last name. When we got married, he was the first NFL player to take his wife's last name and put it on his jersey on television. In the history. We were so proud. Yet his family disowned us for 2 years, wouldn't talk to us, because it was a disrespect to the culture, right? The man, we take the man's last name and then make it so public. We took each other's. The family was very disappointed and wouldn't acknowledge my last name. They would ignore it. They wouldn't honor it. The NFL called me a BITCH on the radio. They made this big old thing, and it became this, and we were so proud. And so I went through this depression of like, how can something we're so proud as a couple be so bad for society and our families? And so I realized it was for us mostly a cultural thing. So when I was getting my master's in women's studies, I went to the Mexican American Studies department in San Diego State and I said, help me with this. How do we deal with cultural traits that are hurting us as women? Mm-hmm. How do I overcome this? Are there any books? Is there any research, anything? And they said, no, it has to do with family. Do not touch it.
Don't touch it.
And I said, oh no, don't tell me not to touch something, because I'm going to touch it 100 times over, right? That's the worst thing you can tell me. So I decided to invest about $100,000 at that time into traveling the country and doing focus groups, because when all this happened, I had so many young Latin women come up to me, women in general, saying, "You are so brave. I wish I could be like you." And I was like, brave? I didn't cure cancer. I haven't worked, like, we didn't do anything that I would consider brave. We just made a choice as a couple. But they said I could never do that. I could never go against my family. I could never do something that would make my family so upset. So I started realizing these young women weren't living for themselves. They were all living for their family and the cultural traits that oppress them, right? They weren't making decisions that would make them feel good. So I started realizing that this was something that was very common. And so I wanted to find out, how common is this? And we need to help these women break free from this. And so as I traveled the country and shared my story, because I realized in order for them to open up and share theirs, I had to be vulnerable and share mine, about my trauma and my father and the abuse and drug addiction, just everything that I've been through. And as I created focus groups and shared my story, they opened up and shared theirs. And about 70 to 75% of Latin women at that time were in a mild depression because they didn't even think about living their lives for themselves. They thought about living their lives for their families and their culture and not disappointing their parents and all of that. And so that's when I decided to write my first book on the research that I found called Empowering Latinas, Breaking Boundary, Freeing Lives. It was just sharing my story from a place of love and contribution and putting the information out there and telling Latin women, our culture is beautiful, but there's so many traits that hurt us. We need to keep the good and let go of the bad. And never did I think it was going to launch me into a career of empowering women. And that's what it's done. I published that in 2001, so 22 years ago. My career in the space of empowering and developing women started because of my first book.
Wow. Now you have your PhD.
Now I have my PhD.
And you have started the Dr. Yasmin Davidds Leadership Institute and the Multicultural Women Executive Leadership Foundation. Your curriculum is being taught at USC.
We have a partnership with the USC Marshall School of Business. Right here, these beautiful women here is one of my cohorts that graduated from I think this is a 2018 or 2019 cohort of our women, our graduates. Every year we have a big graduation gala. Ours is coming up November 9th. And we take a picture at the end of the graduation gala of our women. And I look at this picture and it makes me cry sometimes, because it's like, these women are now own their power at a level they didn't before they started the program. And it truly is like, my legacy, knowing that these women, not only are they more empowered, they're better human beings, because in order to be a better leader, you have to be a better human being. There's no question to it. You can't be a better leader without it, because you lead people. So we teach them how to be better humans, leaders, but it's mostly by healing.
By healing. Yes.
It truly is. But we don't market that, because people are like, what? I mean, we don't market it. We say, come to heal and be a better leader, But we, at the core, it's healing that allows them to remove the traumas that are now a barrier, and their self-limiting beliefs about who they can become. And we help heal that to open the space so the new best version of themselves can step in. And it's phenomenal to watch. It's so remarkable to see the transformation.
It is phenomenal. It's so freaking amazing, really.
You do that work too. Yes.
I do that work too. And I work with the leaders, the women who are on the leading edge of the leading edge, because they're the ones that are pulling the other women that aren't quite there yet. Like you are that force that pulls these, I see these women that are sitting in this picture behind you. It's just absolutely beautiful, which is all in a huge expansion and evolution of our humanity and our spirituality and which is really who we are as beings, whether we think of ourselves as a human being or a spiritual being or whatever that is. But when more people realize the power that they have to, do so many things, spread love, empower others, change, adversities, all of that stuff. It is the up leveling of the entire, not just culture, but the entire race, the entire world. And it's just like, whoo, and, like you, I'm someone who's chosen to recycle adversity and trauma and in a way to help others. And I really consider that this is the true definition of vitality. It's not like the medical spa definition of vitality, but when we can take everything that's happened to us, the good, the bad, the ugly, and recycle that into the next iteration of ourselves, knowing that we have so much more to give, despite the limiting beliefs, despite the traumas, despite all of the things that we could very easily have said, my life has been really hard, I just couldn't do it. And nobody would have blamed us. We could have sat there and just lived a mediocre life. But when we didn't do that, when we have figured out a way to repurpose and recycle all of those things, that's vitality. That's in the Lavish framework that I have, the V in there, one of the principles of the V, which is the acronym, is vitality. And that's what I talk about. And that has to do with healing. We can't recycle without doing that introspection. And I always say that
when you say vitality, it reminds me, I love that word, because when people go to our graduation and they see these graduates on stage and they say, I want what she has, they're beaming. There's this inner peace in them. They're shining. It's vitality. They have this vitality now in them that they didn't have before. And people say, she's different. I can't explain how she's different, but she's different now. So it's a new sense of life. It's a new sense, but it's because you removed that goo, that ugliness, that pain, whatever you want to call it. And it brings new life. Vitality is new life, but it's a new form of life, a new energy that was stuck because of trauma, I believe.
Right. Or whatever that was like hiding it, right, is gone. And so that innate peace that we all already have, that we forget, we have this amnesia because of the things that have happened to us, that gets taken away. And I saw a video online of one of your graduations, and there were so many candid clips of these women. I mean, yes, everybody was dressed up, but the exuberance that was just emoting from these women was, it came through the video. It was so amazing how you could just see it. So, and you talk about using your personal story and that you being vulnerable and sharing your story, other people were able to open up and do that. How do you see the use of one's personal story as the doorway to being an impactful leader? And how do you teach women to do this? Particularly, I'm asking this because women, there's the whole like sister wounds thing. Women are sometimes not nice to other women. And in business in particular, there's some competition and all of that there. And so that vulnerability piece can be really hard to get some people to open up. And I know that people want to, though. People want to.
Absolutely. I'm a true believer of saying, put your story out there so that you get to share your narrative instead of someone else sharing it, right? You get to control that narrative. But mostly when a woman acts in a certain way, let's say towards me, that's not supportive, I have a lot of empathy for her. Because I think, what happened to you in your life? that was so horrible that has caused you to want to inflict pain on others or to be so self-serving. I don't judge them. I have empathy for them because I believe that comes from wounds, right? So I believe that in sharing, in my 20 years of working with women all over the world in all nationalities, ethnicities, and ages, and socioeconomic statuses, the number one, let's just say, emotion, or the number one thing that is the most disempowering is shame. Shame is the most disempowering experience a woman or a person can feel. And for the most part, people, women, their stories are associated to shame. Traumas in their life are shameful to them that they don't want people to know. They try to hide them. So there's absolutely no way you can ever own your full power that you have inside your body if you carry any shame, if you don't own what happened to you. So when people say, oh, I'm empowered, really, are you able to own all of who you are, all of your past, and own it from a place of strength, right? Owning your story, saying, yes, I was abused. Yes, I was molested. Yes, I was raped. Yes, and it was not my fault. And I don't carry that person's shame. I am a survivor of it. And I am so proud of having survived that. And it actually having survived that has worked in helping me be strong. And all these things that there's so many positives of overcoming trauma and being able to embrace that, but also understanding that there's also a negative effect to that, right? Not trusting people if you were abused, all these things and how that manifests in your life, and committing yourself to healing that so that you're able to become the best version of yourself. So it's in really, first of all, I have to, in my curriculum, women have to read my first book, which is, well, the chapters of my life story as part of the pre-work, because I'm going to ask them to get vulnerable. And I can't do that unless they see me be vulnerable first. So I don't ask anything from any of my students that I don't do first, right? And I believe that in order, so we set it up so there's a process and there has to be vulnerability. And I tell women there is a power in the first day of class, they share what is called their crucible, which is their most painful experience that had the most significant impact in their childhood. Because that's really where everything started when it comes to trauma and stuff like that. And they do it because we do it in a cohort. We do it with all the women, they call it getting emotionally naked. We're going to get emotionally naked. But I started off myself with my story that's in my book. And then our advisors do it second. So we can show leadership is doing it second and it moves on from there. It is a journey. It's not bluntly done. Like, okay, it's a process because we need to be very intentional in how we do it in a way that it's a build up. First, they do it in their learning teams of 5, and then they do it in front of the whole cohort, and they hear leadership. So it's a whole process. But I do believe that in sharing your story and people embracing you and loving you is the most freeing experience, because that's like saying, I'm going to give you all of me. I'm going to put myself all out there. And it's so important that when a person does that there's love and support and no judgment in that space, because that's where the healing begins. They do have to be careful where they do it. They do have to be careful. I would not recommend you go put yourself out there in front of your boss and tell them, like, it's a process, right? But I do believe that it's a very important, and it's the beginning of owning your full authenticity and all of who you are.
Right. Totally. Can you tell us, who are these women that come to your Leadership Institute or sign up to take your curriculum at USC? And I'm asking this specifically because I want the listeners to realize the vastness of and the amazingness of these women who are signing up to do the work.
So these women come to us from all sorts of channels. These are women, usually, manager level, some kind of leadership, or independent contributors who are maybe engineers. They're just all different types of their corporate. We have a lot of deans, academic institutions, deans, leaders, chiefs of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at organizations, government leaders. We have, I would say, about 70% of the women that come to us, or 60 to 70%, are sent by their organization. So, for example, MUFG, it's a big bank. They send 10 women a year. They select them. We have Turner Construction that sends women. We have Fidelity Investments that sends women through every cohort. And then we have women that sign up on their own. And if they can't afford the entire tuition, we have partial scholarships through our foundation that we grant to them. We never believe money should be an issue of being able to participate. We get most of our women through alumni. Alumni are our greatest, I say, people that pay it forward and say, you have to do this program. This changed my life. So a lot of our alumni send women. That's mostly through the conferences that I go speak. Women are interested in participating in whatever it is that I teach. So, but these are women, you go through an interview process, and you do have to qualify, because you do have to have a certain level of professional experience, because we talk about situations about how to navigate your organizational work, because the system, especially organizational hierarchies, are not created for women to succeed. They're just not.
Right.
You know that. They're not created. I'm not saying that they created it against us. I'm just saying they were created by people in power at that time when they were created. It was men, by men for men, hierarchy, right? Hierarchy came from the military and it went over to organizational. So the structures that are in place do not support women moving up. So it's very frustrating. So how do we navigate that? How do we do it graciously in a way where we still have to work within the system, but we can push through it and be able to still be authentic? And so women that come to our programs are women who are frustrated, who are stuck, who have tried other leadership programs and they just learn competencies and they teach them traditional ways. It's like, okay, great, but that's not helping me move up. Like, they have MBAs, they're attorneys, they're medical doctors. They're the most educated at times, right? We have of all kinds, and they just can't seem to move up or can't seem to get unstuck. And we tell them, it's not you. You have done your part. Like, it's not you. And they're like, really? This whole time they kept thinking something was wrong with them. Right?
Yeah. Something's wrong with me. I need to get more education. I'm going to, right?
Exactly.
or something. Yeah.
So there's a lot of validation that happens in this programs. There's a lot of supporting community. They realize that, this is the world we live in. Until we get in positions of power and change it, we have to be able to navigate it and make as much change as we can throughout the way. And they're able to fully express themselves in ways that they're like, oh my God, I did experience sexism. I did experience racism. It wasn't just me thinking that I did, because they realized that 30 other women in the program went through the same thing. And so it's very powerful.
Yeah, that kind of community is so powerful. I think it's so easy as, I would say, a high achieving woman, no matter what field that you're in, there's an aspect of loneliness. I mean, this has been talked about a lot, right? Successful women feel lonely. They feel unsupported, and we have things happen to us. And because we have that loneliness factor, or we don't have the community, we don't share it with anybody. And so it's very easy to begin to think it's just me. It's just my own situation. I'm this isolated thing. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with this situation. And being in a community and being able to share that and realizing, wait a minute, I'm not the only one this is happening to. I remember being like, oh, thank God. And then also just being like, okay, now what are we going to do about it? Right. So that's so powerful. I'd like to read a quote from a congressman that you worked with. He said, Yasmin Davidds delivers a profound and compelling message of empowerment. She tells all women to not allow cultural expectations to confine nor define them. She teaches them to live by what they believe and to leave the rest behind. First of all, what a compliment. And I'd really love to talk about cultural norms. I mean, you've touched on it a little bit. That's a huge part of your story. But how you empower women to actually leave those behind and live a life that's true to themselves. This authenticity is a principal pillar in what I work with women on through the Lavish framework. But I believe that it has a much deeper meaning than what most people kind of understand authenticity to be. More like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do because I'm being true to myself. But there's a deeper meaning there. So how do you define authenticity? And how do you get other women to not only understand what it is and its importance, but to make it a reality in their own lives?
You know, I define authenticity as the ability to live and be your true self, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the cultural norms, regardless of the societal pressures, regardless of the corporate hierarchy, regardless of whatever it is, that you're able to be true to what you believe, and no matter how painful it is, and work through it to continue being your authentic self. An example that I recently went through a few years ago, and that I continuously at times it still kind of can trigger me, and I have to walk myself through it, is that in our culture, Latino culture, you do not put your parents in homes when they're older. You just don't do it. It's just, how can, the whole cultural thing is, well, they didn't put you in a home when you were a child, so why are you going to put them in a home? It's like, but to me, my mom got to an age where she needed 24-hour care because she would wander at night. She would leave, and I could no longer, when I traveled, I can't afford a 24-hour nurse here at home, right? But there was homes I could take care of her in ways to ensure she doesn't leave. But the whole Latino culture, you don't put your parents in homes. What kind of daughter are you? Would come into play. And many people that I know would never do that. But I had to make a choice during COVID for her own safety, that I was still traveling and doing my thing, and I couldn't bring that home. So I had to put her, it was so painful for me. But I knew that I had to be true to myself. That was the healthiest thing. And the only thing that held me back was my cultural mindset telling me that I was a bad daughter if I did that, right? Mm-hmm. And my mother at that time telling me, can't believe you're doing this. We don't do this in our culture. But I had to be authentic and true to ask myself, do you believe this is the best thing you could do for your mother? And I do believe that's the best thing, the mm-hmm. healthiest thing, the best thing. It's just a cultural norm that mm-hmm. wouldn't allow me to be authentic to myself. And I had to fight through that. I cried, I grieved, I went through therapy because of it. Cultural norms are powerful, right? They're powerful. So I've been in this space for 20 something, 30 years, and I needed help to be able to be okay with that. And I did it, and she's been in a home since then, and I go see her all the time. And at times I have to take a step back when someone makes a comment and says, we would never do that. And I'm the first one to say, I did that with my mom. And people are like, they don't know what, they look at me, and I said, it was the best thing for her. I don't tell them they're wrong for how they think. And by hearing me, they're like, oh, wow, if she did it, maybe I need to look into it. Maybe it's not so bad. So the question is, how do I teach others to be true to their voice, to themselves, their authenticity? First is by example. It's always by example first. And then providing a community to hold space for us that want to break those norms, to want to be authentic, and validating each other and helping each other heal through these false beliefs that we were not going to be good people or good daughters or good by doing something that goes against our culture. So I do believe you need a community or a therapist or somebody or something to support you while you are healing these beliefs that you have lived with for so long and transforming yourself to live the life you want to live and you should be living. I think that's where many women and people get stuck. They can't overcome these beliefs. They know they no longer serve them, but they have too much power over them.
Right. Do you think you could have done what you did if you hadn't done all your healing work?
I think it probably I would have, something really bad would have had to happen for me to feel that I didn't have a choice. Like my mom wandered and she get hurt. And I'm like, okay, I know how it, like something. So basically it's like self-sabotage. You wait till something bad happens at times. So you realize like you keep sabotaging yourself until you're like, oh my gosh, I need to change. If I hadn't healed, I would have continued to live with the guilt. I mean, I would have continued to do it because of the guilt and let her stay with me until either police would have gotten involved because something would have happened and they would have said like she needs more care. And then so to that extent, I believe that I made a choice based because of my healthy self. I knew it was the healthiest thing that I don't feel I would have done if I hadn't healed.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is that you were able to come to a place of awareness of what was needed to happen way before life and the universe kicked you off the cliff and said, you're going to have to do this or something bad's going to happen, because you were aware of that this is a cultural norm. And you had done your healing to be able to look at that from a place of freedom, really. Because when we haven't done our healing, we think that we're making choices out of freedom, but we're actually making choices based off of limiting beliefs, traumas that have happened to us, the fears, the anxieties, all of that stuff. That's what's actually making us make the decisions. But when you've done your healing, you come to a situation like that. Doesn't mean that actually taking action on it is easy and that you don't need help to make those decisions, but you can stand in the face of those things and truly with freedom say, I see what the cultural norm is. I see what everyone's saying, and I know the truth for myself, and I'm going to move towards that no matter how hard it is. Yes, I need a therapist to help me through this. I need family. I need community. I need my best friend, like whatever that is. But I feel like what you're describing that's true free will. That's true freedom to make choices. And that only happens when you are in a place of awareness because you've done your healing.
Yeah. And a place of healthy, right? Healthy decision making based on true freedom and not on guilt. Guilt is such a heavy, heavy aspect of our culture. And I refuse to live from a place of guilt.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we've been talking just for a couple minutes here about voice, really. So let's talk a little bit more about voice. As one of the top negotiators in the world, the top female negotiators in the world, which is just amazing. And one who teaches other women the fine yet powerful art of communication. How does the knowledge and the ability to own one's authority and authentic voice translate into transformation, not only in business, but in one's personal everyday life? That's a big question. As I just did that, I'm like, wow, that's a really big question. But I think to be more succinct, I would say communication is hard. It's an art form, and there's not always an algorithm for it, right? So if a woman has the knowledge and the ability to own their authority, be that poised, buttoned up, no matter what's happened to them, and using that's the thing, that's their backbone, right? That's their authentic voice. How does that transform their business? How does that transform business? How does that transform their personal life? Why is it so important? People might say, I don't need to worry about my voice because I don't want to speak on stage, or I'm not a negotiator, or I'm not an attorney, or like all of that. And there's a lot of educated women who aren't speaking up for themselves or for what they believe.
Yes. And so, after doing this work for such a long time and working with so many women, I've come to realize that many women, people in general, but women specifically, they hold a lot in. They hold a lot in, and then when they just can't anymore, they just release it, and it just comes out where they're angry, and they're just, it's an emotional, volcano. And so, and I do believe a lot of it is because they don't have language. They don't have the language to be able to self-advocate with graciousness, I call it. And that's why my next book is called Graciously Assertive. And it's all about voice and being able to assert yourself and self-advocate while holding space for the other side. So what is important and what I teach women is that, yes, you have every right to feel the way you feel. You have every right to state your opinion, as the person on the other side does too. There's two people in the conversation, or so everything that you're experiencing, they're experiencing for themselves too. We tend to forget, we bottle it up for so long that when we're ready to let go, we forget that person on the other side also needs space to express themselves in ways. So what I teach women and what I think is important is, first of all, yes, they may not want to speak on stage, but we don't live in this world alone. And we live with other people. And it's important for us to understand how our words and our behavior impact other people. That's what I call social awareness. So first is self-awareness. You have to understand yourself. What are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? Are you being triggered? What can you say right now to express yourself in ways that it doesn't sound where you are angry? But basically, it may be curiosity. It may be whatever it is you're experiencing. And then secondly is social awareness. What you're going to say right now, how is it going to impact people? Can you say it in a way that's more about asking a question instead of accusatory? I mean, there's so many different aspects. And then self-regulation. How can I regulate my emotions in a way that I don't hurt people, that I don't, because at the end of the day, we want a certain outcome. And the outcome may be to be heard, to be understood, to get a salary raise, whatever it may be. But unless we use our voice in a way that people will listen, we're never going to get the outcome that we want.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's really in the process of how you use your voice. So you can own your voice. So when I first started developing and empowering women, I didn't understand that when you make women feel empowered, you just better watch out. Because they went to their bosses and told them exactly how they felt, what they want in ways. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, it was like power. There's responsibility with power.
Right.
And so if you feel empowered enough to go tell people how you feel, you need to be responsible enough to know how you're going to say it, how it's going to impact them, because you might get the opposite of what you want if you're not responsible in your delivery of your message, right? So I teach women how to be able to self-advocate, but at the same time, take a step back and understand that unless they feel they're winning, you're not going to get what you want. So you not only have to go in there thinking about yourself, you have to think about ways that they win when they give you what you want. And you need to position your ask in a way where they see they win too. Right? And so how you frame your message, how you frame your ask, your tone is very important. Right? Many people say, well, I told them the way I felt and everything was true. And they agreed with what I was saying was true, but they still didn't give me what I wanted. I said, well, if you came to me with that attitude, I wouldn't give it to you either. Meaning that nobody likes to feel that they're being pushed against a wall, right? To be given, even if what you deserve is what you deserve, they still don't like to be forced to give you what you deserve, right? So tone is key. So being able to practice your tone and record yourself and to send it through 3 people who will be honest with you. Because if it sounds like you're angry, you're most likely not going to get what you want. Unless you're an attorney and that's your job. That's different.
Right.
It's a whole different skill set. But so I believe that in being gracious, respectful, but yet assertive, and being able to tell someone, I completely understand what you're saying and completely disagree with you. And let me share with you why.
Ooh, that's powerful. Just how you said that right there.
Yes. I mean, just they'll be like curious because they don't feel threatened. They don't feel they're attacked. They'll be curious to hear what you have to say and they'll stay open. But the moment you say you're wrong and I completely disagree with you is the moment they shut down.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's really a skill, but I don't believe no one's ever taught us. There's no television show. There's nobody we can watch. There's nothing. So I believe there's language and tone and actually everything that is coming out in my next book, which I believe is my greatest work of all time because it's after 20 years of doing this work. I kind of brought it all together, will really help women use their voice in ways that will get them the outcome that they want.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. I love this. As you're talking, I'm thinking about Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. Have you read that?
Yes, don't take it personal. In other words,
right. Well, don't take it personal. But the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And before I read that, I thought that meant like do what you say you're going to do. Right? Okay, it's like okay, I got that. But when I actually read it, it was a whole different understanding of the use of our words and the way that we communicate. And it's not only not speaking ill about ourselves, like that self-critical way that we talk, but in the way that we communicate with other people, we're actually communicating with ourselves. And so if we are trying to be loving to ourselves, and we want things for ourselves, we want things to go well, the way that we communicate, the words that we use, the way that we say them, all of that with other people is the reason we need to be impeccable with it is because we're actually communicating with ourselves because people are just mirrors for us. Just like you're saying, if you talk to me that way, I wouldn't have given it to you either. Like, it's like if you were standing in front of the mirror and said what you just said to yourself, would you really have said, yes, here you go, have whatever you want? Like there's just no way. And it's about, oftentimes in business, it's about getting what we want. But in life, in general, it's about, what's behind everything? We want to belong. We want to feel love. We want to feel value. We want to feel worthy, whatever that is. And what you're talking about, there's the how to, and then there's the why. And one of the things I love about what you're talking about is, and I'm sure in the way that you teach people is, it's not just come and I'm going to give you a to-do list of how to do things. When people understand the why and they actually get that, like, oh, be impeccable with your word because this is all about you. So how you talk to other people is like, whoa, that's like, for a lot of people, that's a light bulb moment to be realizing that the words that we say and how we communicate them are all about us and not about the other person, no matter what they've done, no matter what you want from them, no matter how egregious you think the situation may be, that impeccability. And I think that's what you're describing. So I love what you said, that authenticity, the voice. Whew. Oh, Yasmin, you're amazing. So, as a woman on I can very confidently say you are a woman on the leading edge of the leading edge. You are the lighthouse pulling that magnetic pull of women, that force that's saying, let's up level here. We've got another plane of existence that we have not just a possibility, but it's right here. Come. And so as that kind of woman, I'm wondering what sustains you? Like what keeps you nourished and moving forward that is like life-giving for you?
You know, I love spending time alone. It's really interesting. People think I'm an extrovert, but I'm really an introvert. And what I mean by that, I love nature and thinking and curiosity and really what nurtures me is being able to have the space, the mind and the space to just be and just feel grateful and take the energy in. And then when I'm exhausted, it's getting under my blankets, turning off my phone and watching, a whole season of something on Netflix, right? Because I don't have to think. It just relaxes my mind. And then the noise is not good for me. Like too much noise, meaning like all this drama and this and that. It's like no. Like it doesn't soothe me. So what replenishes me is really understanding the magnitude of the possibilities, and really understanding that I feel I'm just starting on my own evolution of what's next. And, I remember a couple years ago, I was working with a leadership coach and she was helping me create a strategy for my next level of business. And she asked me a bunch of questions and I was just talking, answering from my passion, and she was taking notes and it was being recorded. And she said, "Why should anybody care about your message?" And I said, "Because this is about humanity. If you're a human being, you should." And I started going into this whole humanity thing. And she said, everything you've talked about up to now has nothing to do with women, and it has to do with humanity. You're at the humanity level now. I said, "No way. There's no way. Like, that's way too big. Like, I even get the chills now, way too big. Like, who am I to talk about humanity? Who am I to tell the whole world what's the best of being a human being? Like, I got women. I know it. I'm successful. I got this down. I could do it. Like, women, that's my niche. Like, I got this. Like, I feel confident, but don't put me on the stage to talk about humanity because I'm nobody to talk about humanity." That's kind of like my mindset. And she said, "Your homework for tonight is to ask yourself, how long is it going to take your mind to catch up to your soul?"
Ooh, woo.
And I still get the chills because basically my own limiting beliefs of my capacity, of my own humanity, of who I can become, and the impact I could have, my mind was limiting where my soul already existed, right? And I was like, it took me almost 2 years to get to where I am now. But in the back of I wrote this book about, humanity and I create these pillars and stuff. But it wasn't until about 2 months ago where I participated in a very extensive, one of the highest caliber, and I don't want to say the name because of educational programs that I thought was going to take me to the next level of academia and business. And it was one of the top in the world. And I became a student of that. And when I became a student of that, I realized that they were trying to solve organizational issues, like how can teams get along better? And I was like, really? I'm trying to talk about humanity. How are we going to make the world a better place? How are we going to solve global leadership problems of country leaders who are going to war over ego and blah, blah, blah. And even the professors were amazing and phenomenal, but the conversation levels were very organized. They weren't at a capacity that I felt, wow, I am at a different level. Not good or bad, just different. And I thought, and I exited the program only after 3 weeks in it, and it was a 2-year program. And I realized to myself, I needed this to know where I was at. I didn't know where I was at. If the highest level of academia was not even talking about these global leadership issues about humanity, that means it's not being taught in those places. That means that I am at a humanity level that academia has not even caught up to, that means I'm ready.
Yeah, you have to look back at history. The people that have made the largest leaps, whether it's in science, in psychology, in spirituality, whatever, academia was always way behind them. Those people like Einstein and the Curies and all of these, like, they were pariahs in their academic circles because their consciousness, their vision was so far ahead,
advanced. Yeah.
advanced. And what you're saying is there's no word in the English language. I mean, it's powerful, but there's really no word in the English language. And I speak Spanish fluently as well as you do, and I can't think of one in Spanish either. So, it just is with a capital I. It is. And what you're saying is what needs to be talked about on the level of humanity. And you know what they say about, if you want to empower a community, what do? You educate the women, you empower the women. And so where those two things things converge, for you, you're probably already on the right path. This is an enlightening conversation. And we could talk about a lot of this stuff for a long, long time. What areas do you struggle with?
I struggle with something called fibromyalgia. I don't know if you've heard. Oh, fibromyalgia. You're a medical doctor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So energy is limited. I only have certain amounts of it, and then I crash if I don't manage it properly and all that. And I always struggle with my soul keeping up with my body. I mean, my body keeping up with my soul, meaning like I want to do so much, but my body doesn't let me. So I have to manage my energy and have to make sure that I eat the right foods and because food makes a big difference in how I feel energy wise. So I wish that I could just, go, but no, like I have to take a lot of rest. And after I go for a few days, I have to probably take a day to just stay in bed and relax my body, and which is good. I'm happy about that. But that would be, sometimes I do so much what I love. I'm in a relationship. My boyfriend's like, babe, what about me? I'm like, honey, I do spend time with you, but I have to do this. And I wish I would have more energy there. And so, but I believe I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not religious, but very spiritual. I believe that whatever I experience in my life, it's there for a reason until it's not. And that means I don't need it anymore. So I may be that I needed fibromyalgia to help me really. I don't deal with negative energy. I cut it all out. I'm the closest people to me is all. So I've had to do that to protect myself, to have the right energy. I feel that maybe I needed that to have all the tools and all that until I don't need it anymore. Who knows? I mean, I'm always healing. I do feel that autoimmune disorders are a form of trauma that's still trapped. I mean, part of it. I continuously heal different layers. And I do feel that one day I may not have it. But I feel that for the time that I do, I continue working in ways that work for me. So that's why I feel that excited about it being a journey. I don't know who I'm going to be next year, where I'm going to be, or what I'm going to learn. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be like, who knows? Like, so I'm excited. I get excited about the journey.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I will just say from a medical perspective, I'm a Western trained medical doctor. And I've also was, kind of one of the first doctors practicing functional and integrative medicine in the country, back in the early 2000s when that was coming about, and also very spiritual person. And having worked with women such as yourself for over 20 years, yes, trauma and autoimmune, they go together. And I also know that a lot of women, like the energetics of being like I said before, on that leading edge of the leading edge, which is a very energetically, I want to say challenging. It can be challenging, but it requires a lot of energy. And the more that our consciousness expands, the more energy can be required physically for us, and that need to figure out how to regulate the direction, and that flow of that energy becomes greater. And so I'm saying all of that because I think that I won't say that there's a lot of women in your position, in our position, like you and I both, who experience physically a lot of what you're describing. And I know there's not a lot of women necessarily like you. You're unique. And myself either. We're all very unique. But the graciousness with which you just described your journey and your experience of your physicality, knowing that we're not our bodies, and it's so easy to identify as that, was such a wonderful, I would say, not acceptance, I would say allowance of the human experience of who you are. And I don't know why, but I just want to thank you for that, because it was so filled with so much grace and calm and peace in the way that you described. And I know that those things are not easy always to go through. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would love it as we close up here. I know you mentioned your next book is coming out, but I really want people to hear again. What's it called? When's it coming out? And where can we find it, or pre-order, or whatever?
Yes. So the book is called Graciously Assertive: How Becoming a Better Human Being Makes You a Better Leader. And it really is a culmination of my life's work. And I was just because I'm turning in the manuscript October 10th. Literally on Tuesday, the manuscript is due. So we're doing all the finals right now. And I was reading through it last weekend, and I was crying because I just realized that I've created these 8 pillars of what graciously assertive leadership looks like. And it has to do with self-awareness, social awareness, self-regulation, healthy boundaries, zero tolerance for judgment. I mean, self-care, self-love, all these things that I've learned who I am and how I live. And after interviewing a lot of my alumni and going through their interviews and finding all the commonalities of how they live their life now, that is where I got these 8 pillars. Is that's what becomes of being gracious. And graciously assertive means being able to self-advocate while still holding space for the other side, which means being able to have 2 completely opposing beliefs but still honoring and respecting one another's, and knowing that one is not better than the other, they're just different. And I believe that if we as human beings can see the world, ourselves and others in it like that, this world would be a much better place. But we tend to make others wrong, right? To make us right. There has to be a winner and a loser. There has to be all these things that I believe cause so much pain that are unnecessary. So it gives women language. It's geared to language on how to self-advocate while still holding space for the other side, how to communicate in ways that show impact, but still have compassion. And I believe that we're all good people, that bad things happen to us that cause us to do bad things, right? I don't believe we're born evil. I believe that people can become evil based on trauma, so it's really trying to take the good of humanity and helping individuals take responsibility on who do I want to be as a human being? How do I want to lead? And how do I want to impact the world? So it comes out May 2024. It'll be in all the available bookstores, online, Amazon. We'll have a big book launch for it. I'll definitely let you know. California State Senator Susan Rubio wrote the foreword for the book. She's like, all the legislators, I'm going to buy it for all the California state legislators. They all need to read it. So it's phenomenal because it taught, in her reading it, she had to read the book to write the foreword. She said, she broke down and said, I didn't realize that how I lead, I'm teaching my staff how to lead. And I've been running them ragged. I work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and so do they. But what am I teaching them? That this is what life is? She goes, I know that it's not sustainable, and I know I need to take better self-care, but I didn't realize the impact I was having on so many people who are watching me. And I don't want to do that to them. I need to change the way I do things in the office. And so it really impacted her wanting, and she did make changes in her office. She wants to be a better leader. And we need to understand that people are watching us as leaders. And is this what we want to teach?
Wow. So it's having a huge impact already, and it's not even published. You haven't even turned in the manuscript.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, we will really look forward to that. Dr. Yasmin Davidds, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for giving us a look into what's behind this persona of a super successful, powerful, impactful woman, and being open with us. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Right. The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom is brought to you by Dr. Erin Martin and the Lavish Group. To find out more about Dr. Erin and how you can create and embody a lavish life for yourself, visit thelavishgroup.com. And don't forget to search for Lavish Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Lavish Group, thanks for listening. And remember, you too can live a lavish life of fulfillment, beauty, and love.